The voice that cut through the grand ballroom of the Fairmont Royal York belonged to a woman who had never in her life been told no by anyone she considered worth listening to. "Excuse me." Catherine Ashford Webb's tone wasn't a question. It was never a question. "This is a private event. I don't believe you were on the guest list I personally reviewed." The woman she had stopped, a woman in a midnight blue wrap dress, pearl earrings, natural hair pinned up with the kind of effortless precision that takes either a great deal of money or a great deal of practice, paused. She turned slowly. Her name was Leonora Vance. Most of the 300 people currently sipping Chateau Petrus in that gilded room did not know that name. The ones who did, the ones who had been paying attention to the technology sector for the past decade, who read the right journals, who sat on the right boards, those people would have gone very quiet at the sight of Catherine Ashford Webb blocking her path. But Catherine Ashford Webb had not been paying attention to the technology sector. She had been paying attention to the guest list, to the seating chart, to whether the orchid arrangements were the correct shade of ivory, and to the presence of anyone who did not belong. And this woman, in her assessment, did not belong. "I'm sorry," Leonora said. "This is the Ashford Infrastructure Partners Anniversary Gala." Catherine's voice carried the particular resonance of a woman accustomed to rooms going quiet when she spoke. "It's an invitation-only event. Our guests are," a small pause considered, "deliberate, a very specific group of people." Leonora looked at her for a moment, not a long moment, but the kind of moment that contains more than its length suggests. "I received an invitation from Gregor Webb," she said. "Your husband, I believe." Catherine's chin lifted precisely 3 degrees. "My husband invites many people. That doesn't mean every invitation is appropriate." Around them, the evening continued its polished circulation. Waitstaff moved with practiced invisibility. A string quartet in the far corner played something baroque and unhurried. The guests nearest to this particular exchange had not yet noticed it, or had noticed it, and chosen the more socially comfortable position of pretending they hadn't. "I see," Leonora said. "I'm sure you can understand," Catherine continued, and her voice had softened into something that was not kindness, but wore its clothing, "that certain events require a certain caliber of guest, for the comfort of everyone involved." She did not touch Leonora. She was too careful for that, too practiced in the art of drawing lines without physically crossing them. But her hand rose, briefly, a gesture that was half dismissal and half the kind of hurting motion one uses for something that has wandered into the wrong space. Leonora looked at that hand, looked at Catherine's face, looked, for one quiet second, at the room full of people and crystal and inherited money. Then she took out her phone and made a call. She spoke 4 sentences. Her voice was low enough that Catherine could not hear the words. The call lasted perhaps 45 seconds. Then she put her phone away, said, "Enjoy your evening," and walked, with the particular calm of someone who has already decided what is going to happen next, toward the bar. Catherine watched her go with the satisfaction of a woman who believes she has just handled a situation. She had not handled a situation. She had started one. Gregor Webb found out what had happened approximately 11 minutes after it happened, when his chief of staff appeared at his elbow with the expression of a man who has rehearsed very carefully what he is about to say and is still not confident it will go well. "Sir," the chief of staff said, "there appears to have been an incident involving Ms. Vance." Gregor Webb was 61 years old. He had built Ashford Infrastructure Partners from a regional construction firm into one of the largest infrastructure development companies in Canada. He had survived 2 recessions, 1 hostile acquisition attempt, and 34 years of marriage to Catherine, all of which had given him an excellent ability to recognize the particular texture of a problem that was about to become significantly worse. "Where is she?" "At the bar, sir. She seems quite comfortable." "And my wife?" "Accepting congratulations from the Pemberton table, sir." Gregor Webb set down his champagne glass. "Get me to Leonora Vance in the next 2 minutes without my wife noticing." Quietly. The chief of staff, whose name was Elliot Fraser, and who earned every dollar of his salary in moments like this one, managed it in 90 seconds. Leonora was standing at the bar with a glass of sparkling water, not champagne, Gregor noticed. She never drank at working events, looking at the room with the expression of someone reading a document. Calm, assessing, in no hurry whatsoever. Leonora, Gregor said. He was already apologizing before he reached her. I am so sorry. I had no idea. I wasn't aware that Catherine had. She didn't touch me, Leonora said, which was both accurate and somehow more precise than reassuring. She was perfectly civil. She blocked your. She expressed her opinion about my presence. Leonora turned and looked at him. She had the eyes of someone who has been underestimated so many times that she no longer bothers to be surprised by it. People express opinions. It's fine, Gregor. It is not fine. He lowered his voice. Around them, the bar traffic was light. No one was close enough to overhear. You're here because I need you here. The Halverson deal. If you walk out tonight, the whole thing. I'm not walking out, she said. Catherine didn't know who you were. I should have told her. I take full responsibility for Gregor. She set down her water glass. I know why I'm here. I know what the Halverson acquisition means for your firm. I know what it means for mine. She picked up the glass again, took a sip. None of that has changed. I made a phone call. The appropriate people are now aware of what occurred this evening. We can proceed. He stared at her. What phone call? To my legal team, she said, and to the journalist from the Financial Post who has been trying to get a comment from me for 3 weeks about the proposed merger between Vance Capital and your infrastructure division. Gregor was quiet for a moment. I told him, Leonora continued, that I wasn't ready to comment yet, that I was still evaluating whether the partnership reflected the values of my company. Another moment of quiet. That's all I said, she clarified. I thought it was important that he had the most current information available. Gregor Webb had been a businessman for 35 years. He understood exactly what had just happened, and he understood, looking at the woman in front of him, the woman his wife had tried to redirect toward a door, that he was now in a position that required something from him that Catherine's money and his connections could not provide. He needed to fix this. Properly. Leonora Vance had grown up in Scarborough, in a 2-bedroom apartment on Lawrence Avenue East where the radiator knocked through every winter night, and the hot water ran cold without warning. Her mother, Audrey, worked nights at a hospital in the dietary department and days at a dry cleaner on Kingston Road. Her father had left when Leonora was 4 and sent money sometimes. Not often, but sometimes, which Audrey deposited without comment into an account she refused to touch for anything, except Leonora's school fees. There was a public school 2 blocks from their apartment. Audrey drove Leonora 40 minutes each way to a different school, the kind with a French immersion stream and a science lab and a debate team. Leonora asked once why they didn't just go to the closer school. Because closer isn't always better, her mother said, and you're going to need every advantage I can give you, so don't you waste a single one. Leonora didn't waste them. She was the kind of student who didn't raise her hand first, because she was calculating whether her answer was not just correct, but demonstrably, inarguably correct, before she committed to it. Her debate coach told her she argued like a lawyer. Her math teacher told her she thought like an engineer. Her English teacher told her she had the instincts of someone who understood that the most important thing in any room was not what was being said, but what wasn't. She studied computer science at the University of Toronto on a scholarship that paid 60% of her tuition. She worked the other 40% herself, 3 jobs across 4 years, none of which she complained about, because complaining, as her mother had demonstrated consistently, was a luxury that cost more than it was worth. She started Vance Capital at 32, in an office that was technically a converted storage room in a shared workspace on King Street West, with 2 employees, one of whom was her, and they'd seed she had assembled over 8 years of working in venture capital for other people and learning with the particular attention of someone who plans to use what they are learning exactly how the business worked. 12 years later, Vance Capital managed $4.2 billion in assets. It had invested in 37 companies, 14 of which had gone public. Its flagship tech fund had returned 41% over 3 years. Leonora herself appeared on 3 different lists of the most influential business people in Canada, which she found mildly interesting and entirely beside the point. The point, as it had always been, was the work. She had come to the Fairmont Royal York that evening because Gregor Webb had been chasing a partnership with her for 14 months, and the Halverson acquisition, a mid-sized infrastructure technology company with some genuinely interesting proprietary logistics software, was the kind of deal that, if structured correctly, create something worth both of their time. She had reviewed the financials. She had consulted her team. She had decided to come. She had not, in any of her preparation, anticipated Catherine Ashford Webb. Which was not because she was naive about Catherine Ashford Webb. She had encountered this species of obstacle before. Women, and occasionally men, who processed her presence through a lens ground entirely from assumptions about what a person who looked like her and had come from where she had come from could possibly be doing in rooms like the ones she had earned her way into. She had learned, over 12 years of being that person in those rooms, that there were several possible responses to the Catherine Ashford Webbs of the world. She had learned which one was most effective. The Halverson deal had been 12 months in negotiation. Ashford Infrastructure Partners had been circling the company for 2 years before that. Its founder, a 68-year-old Manitoban named Halverson, who had built his logistics software company, with the stubbornness of someone who genuinely believed the product was worth more than anyone was offering, had refused 3 acquisition bids before Gregor had brought Vance Capital into the conversation. The thesis was straightforward: Leonora's tech expertise and Halverson's trust in her. She had invested in an early Halverson subsidiary 4 years ago, a fact that Gregor had discovered and correctly identified as the door he could not open without her, would unlock the deal. In exchange, Vance Capital would receive a meaningful stake in the merged entity and a seat on the board. It was a good deal. Leonora had known it was a good deal for 11 of the 12 months they had been negotiating. She had taken the 12th month to be certain, because certainty, in her experience, was worth the time it cost. The one condition she had was non-negotiable, and she had stated it in the first meeting. Vance Capital's involvement would not be announced, framed, or positioned publicly in a way that characterized it as secondary to Ashford. They were equal partners in the capital structure, or they were not partners at all. Gregor had agreed. His lawyers had written it into the term sheet. The language was clear. What had not been in the term sheet was the behavior of Gregor's wife at a party. Leonora did not hold Gregor responsible for his wife's character. People were responsible for their own characters, but she held him responsible for the choices he made in response to his wife's character. And those choices, she had learned in her life, told you considerably more about a person than any contract language ever would. She ordered a second sparkling water and waited. Catherine Ashford Webb found out what she had done approximately 40 minutes after she had done it, when Gregor appeared at her elbow in the way he only appeared when something had gone wrong, and he needed her to understand quickly how wrong. "The woman in the blue dress," he said quietly, his back to the room. Catherine's smile at the Tremaine couple across from her did not change. "What about her?" "Her name," he said, "is Leonora Vance." A fraction of a pause. "The Vance Capital woman?" "Yes, I didn't." Catherine stopped, restarted. "She wasn't on my version of the guest list. I added her, after you finalized yours. I should have told you. That's on me." His voice was careful, the voice of a man who has been married a long time and knows exactly how much weight each word is going to carry. "But Kath, I need you to understand what I'm telling you. She is the entire reason the Halverson deal closes. Without her, we don't get Halverson. Without Halverson, the Northern Ontario expansion doesn't happen. The pension fund allocation from the teachers doesn't happen. 2 years of work doesn't happen." Catherine was still smiling at the Tremaines. Her face had not changed, but something behind it had shifted. "She made a call," Gregor continued, "to a journalist at the Post. She didn't say anything on the record yet, but she has positioned herself to say something on the record if she chooses to. What kind of something? The kind that raises questions about whether our company's values are compatible with hers. He paused. She's going to let us decide what the answer to that question is. A long moment. The string quartet shifted keys. Someone laughed too loudly at the Pemberton table. What does she want? Catherine asked. An apology, Gregor said. I think. I haven't asked her directly. From me? He didn't answer that. Gregor. Catherine's voice was very controlled. I was managing the guest experience. I had no idea. I know you didn't know who she was. He finally turned slightly, just enough to look at his wife's profile. But here's what I keep coming back to, Kath. What would you have done differently if you had? She said nothing. Because I think that's the question she's asking too. Leonora was standing near the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked Front Street when Catherine Ashford Webb appeared beside her. The city was below them, lit and moving, doing what cities do on Friday evenings in late spring. Catherine was alone. No husband, no buffer, no strategic placement of bodies between herself and accountability. Leonora noticed this and noted it. Miss Vance, Catherine said, Mrs. Ashford Webb. A pause. Catherine was a woman who commanded social situations. Leonora could see her, with a sort of clinical interest, attempting to locate her footing in a conversation she had not controlled the opening of. I owe you an apology, Catherine said. Leonora waited. I made an assumption this evening that was wrong. I acted on that assumption in a way that was, a small visible effort, discourteous, and I'm sorry for it. It was, Leonora thought, a reasonable apology, professionally constructed, somewhat careful about what, exactly, it was apologizing for, but present. Thank you, she said. Catherine looked at her. She was expecting something. Leonora could see some reciprocation, some absolution, some movement toward the erasure of what had happened. The social grammar of their world operated on a system where apology produced forgiveness and forgiveness produced reset, and then everyone could proceed as though the original offense had been a misunderstanding rather than a revelation. Leonora did not provide the reset. Can I ask you something? She said instead. Catherine waited. When you stopped me earlier, before you knew my name, before you knew my company, before any of that, what did you see? Catherine was quiet for a long moment. The kind of quiet that contains, if you're paying attention, more than the words that eventually follow it. I saw someone I didn't recognize, she said, and that was enough. It wasn't a question. Catherine understood it wasn't a question. I manage these events carefully, Catherine said, and her voice had something in it now. Not defensiveness exactly, but the tone of someone who is looking, perhaps for the first time in some years, at the mechanism they have built and noticing what it does. It's important to me that our guests feel comfortable, Leonora said. Yes. With people like them. Another silence. You've built something, Catherine said finally, and her voice had shifted into a register that was not the social performance of an hour ago. Gregor told me. The numbers. What you've done with your firm in 12 years is extraordinary. I didn't know. I know you didn't, Leonora said. That's rather the point. She looked at the city below them. Scarborough was out there somewhere to the east, past the lights of the downtown core. Lawrence Avenue East with its apartments and its dry cleaners, and the school that was closer but wasn't better. Her mother was in Mississauga now, in a house Leonora had bought her, with a garden that got morning light. The apology was appropriate, Leonora said. I accept it, and tomorrow morning I'm going to call Gregor and tell him that the deal is still on the table, because it's a good deal and I don't let bad evenings destroy good deals. That's always been my rule. Catherine let out a breath. Thank you, but I want you to know something. Leonora turned and looked at her directly. It was not a hostile look. It was the look of someone who has something specific to say and intends to say it precisely. There are women in this city, in this country, who are better at what they do than anyone in this room. And they will never stand in front of you because someone like you decided they didn't belong before they got through the door. That's not just their loss, it's yours. It's your husband's. It's everyone in this room's loss. and they'll never know it. Catherine Ashford Webb stood in front of the window with the city behind her and said nothing. Not, not because she disagreed. The silence had a different quality than disagreement. "Have a good evening," Leonora said. She picked up her water glass from the window ledge where she'd set it. "I'll be in touch with Gregor on Monday." She walked back into the party, the room full of crystal and conversations and the Baroque string quartet that had moved on to something slightly more contemporary. People looked at her. A few recognized her. She could see it in the small adjustment of posture, the slight recalibration that her presence in these rooms sometimes produced in people who had learned to pay attention. She found the table where Halverson himself was sitting, a large, white-haired man from Winnipeg with the handshake of someone who had spent decades on construction sites, and the sharp eyes of someone who had spent those same decades watching people decide whether to underestimate him. He stood when he saw her. "Miss Vance," he said, "I was starting to wonder if you were going to make it over." "I had a small matter to attend to," she said. He laughed, a short, genuine sound. "Gregor's wife corner you?" She looked at him. "She does that," he said without particular malice. "I got the same treatment my first time here. She figured out who I was about 20 minutes later and spent the rest of the night apologizing." He shrugged. "People." "Yes," Leonora said. "People." She sat down. Halverson poured her a water without asking. He'd noticed earlier that she wasn't drinking, and they began to talk. Not about the deal, not at first, about the logistics software that he'd spent 11 years building. The part of it that his engineers wanted to modify for urban transit applications. The municipal contracts he hadn't pursued yet, because he hadn't found the right capital partner to think through the risk properly. About the Northern Ontario corridor and why the current infrastructure models weren't built for the communities actually living there. About what a company in the technology space owed to the places it touched. These were the conversations Leonora was in this room for. Not the orchid arrangements, not the Patras, not the string quartet. This sitting across from someone who had built something real and talking about what building something real required. Around them, the Gala continued its polished rotation. Gregor Webb appeared briefly at the edge of the table, assessed the situation, made the correct decision to leave them alone, and disappeared. His wife was visible across the room, talking to someone from the Tremaine table, her back to the windows. Halverson was talking about the Red River watershed and a drainage management project that had interested him for 3 years. Leonora was listening, actually listening, not performing attention while thinking about something else, but the kind of listening she had always done, the kind that found the thing underneath the thing being said. "The software could do it," he said, "but the capital structure for something like that is complex," she said. "Municipal timelines, federal funding cycles, provincial jurisdiction overlap. I know. We looked at something similar in the Ring of Fire context. Different geography, similar structural problem." She paused. "Would you be open to a conversation about it?" "Not tonight. After the Halverson deal closes. I think there might be a way to—" "Yes," he said, before she finished the sentence. She smiled. It was a small smile, the smile of someone for whom yes, after the right question, is the best sound in a room. The Financial Post article ran 6 weeks later. It was about the Ashford Vance Halverson deal. The acquisition had closed. The joint press release had gone out. The term sheet language about equal positioning had been honored in every particular. The journalist had a quote from Leonora that was 3 sentences long and characteristically precise. He also had, in the sidebar, a brief profile of Vance Capital. The kind of profile that would, in the weeks after publication, produce a noticeable uptick in the number of people requesting meetings with her firm's investment team. The kind that would generate a letter from a 26-year-old woman in Hamilton who had read it 3 times and was writing to say that she had been trying to get a meeting with a venture capital firm for 2 years and didn't know if she was going about it wrong or if the doors just weren't opening, and asking, with a directness that Leonora recognized, for any advice Leonora might have. Leonora read the letter twice. She forwarded it to her head of talent partnerships with a note that said, "Set up a meeting. Keep it on my calendar." She did not know, at the time, whether the woman from Hamilton had the foundation for something fundable. She did not know whether the meeting would become a deal or an investment, or just a conversation that helped someone find the next door. She knew that she didn't know, and that not knowing was not a reason. The doors, in her experience, did not open by themselves. Somebody had to decide to open them. She had learned that a long time ago, on Lawrence Avenue East, from a woman who had driven 40 minutes each way every morning so that her daughter would have every advantage available, and who had said, once with the matter-of-fact clarity of someone for whom waste was not an option, "You're going to need everything I can give you." Leonora had needed it. She had used it, and she had spent the 12 years since building something that, on its best days, gave other people something they could use too. That was what she had built. That was what she continued to build. The orchids at the Fairmont Royal York had been the correct shade of ivory. Leonora had noticed, on her way out that evening, that someone had arranged them well. She had noted it and moved on. There were more important things to attend to.